Hey sports fans, we're back, and today we're going to take a look at the sons of Hall of Fame all-world wide receiver Jerry Rice to see if they have a chance of being great athletes like dear old dad. Whenever a superstar has a child and that child plays sports, we automatically hope that those children will be good or better than their superstar parents. Sometimes, as fate or luck or genetics would have it, the offspring of the star athlete ends up being good and you get an Antoine Winfield Jr., and sometimes it works out the other way and you get an Elijah Holyfield. Today we're going to check in on Jerry Rice Jr. and Brendan Rice to see if these two sons are on a path that can lead to their father's greatness. But before we get into all that, do me a favor and click that subscribe button if you haven't already to stay up to date on this channel. All done? Alright, let's do this. In the National Football League, the name Jerry Rice is an institution. The list of things Jerry Rice has done throughout his Hall of Fame career is probably more than the next two guys on the all-time greats list at his position combined. Okay, maybe not, but in some areas that's not too far-fetched. Whether or not you believe Jerry Rice is the GOAT, his statistical feats have set the bar so high that his name will probably be amongst the top of at least one of those areas for as long as the game is played. It's safe to say that when you're born the son of a legend of this caliber, there is no escaping the comparisons and the pressures that come with playing wide receiver and being the sons of Jerry Rice. As daunting of a task as it may be to step out of Rice's shadow or try to create a shadow of their own, both Rice sons took on the task. Let's see how they're doing. Jerry's oldest son, Jerry Rice Jr., had the fortune or misfortune of being named after arguably the best receiver to ever put on the pads. Like Dad, Jerry Jr.'s position of choice was wide receiver. Although unlike Dad, who stood at 6'2" tall, Jerry Jr. was a modest 5'11". Not a bad height for a wide receiver actually, but unless you're Odell Beckham or a supremely gifted athlete, it's a little lacking in the height department. Although not blessed with blazing speed or quickness, Jerry Rice Jr. was said to be a solid high school receiver who was physical for his size, and although he only recorded just over 700 yards on varsity, he still drew the interest of solid programs like University of Arizona, Cal, Stanford, Washington State, Yale, and UCLA. Given his limited production, having the surname Rice may have had a little to do with that. Rice, who didn't start playing football until high school, was considered a late bloomer but a fast learner. After choosing UCLA, Rice Jr. struggled for playing time and didn't see the field until his sophomore year of college. In 2 games played, Jerry Jr. only recorded 2 catches and was an afterthought in UCLA's wide receivers room and passing game. His junior season would be much of the same, with Jerry Jr. appearing in 7 games and only managing 7 catches and very limited playing time. After 2 disappointing seasons as a Bruin, Jerry Jr. decided to take his talents elsewhere and landed with UNLV, where he appeared in 5 games and upped his catch total to a meager 11 receptions, but did happen to score his first touchdown of his collegiate career. After college, Rice Jr. had a tryout with the Baltimore Ravens that ended without a contract, and then later he had a tryout with his father's old team, the San Francisco 49ers, but also left without a contract. In June of 2014, however, Rice Jr. finally got his NFL opportunity and a chance to make an NFL legacy of his own after being signed by the then Washington Redskins, but after suffering a torn labrum in August of that year, he was released. Following his release, Jerry Rice Jr. channeled his father's work ethic and rehabbed like a madman in hopes of landing a receiving gig wherever he could. Rice found his way to Montreal in the Canadian Football League's Montreal Alouettes, where he had 3 stints with their training camp roster. When asked about his journey, Rice said patience is key, and the fact that he was 24 meant that it was his time to continue pursuing football and see where the road leads him. During his 3rd stint trying to make the Alouettes roster, Rice was battling with a host of American wideouts considered more talented than him. In a twist of irony, one of those wideout receivers, Duron Carter, was also the son of Hall of Fame great Chris Carter. Although Rice didn't make the active roster, he was given a spot on the practice squad but would be part of the training camp cuts that summer, ending his professional career. Jerry Rice's youngest son, Brendan, is also a football player, and like father, he also happens to play wide receiver. Also like his dad, Brendan Rice has a prototypical height for his position. Standing at 6'3", unlike his brother who didn't start playing football competitively until high school, Brendan picked up a football despite his mother's worries about injuries at age 6. Brendan didn't grow up in the same house as Jerry, and being born during Rice's marriage to his wife Jacqueline, and claimed he had very little contact with his father growing up, but still shares the same passion of his father. As a youngster, Brendan loved playing football so much that his mom claims that if she took the football away from him, she could tell it would have broken him. Brendan stuck with football, and in high school, Brendan showed that he had a ton of promise at the same position his father played. His 2,139 receiving yards and 27 receiving touchdowns at Hamilton High School in Chandler, Arizona were enough for him to be recognized as a 4-star recruit by 24/7 Sports and Rivals and drew the eye of a few colleges, including the University of Colorado, where he decided to play ball. Brendan Rice chose Colorado because he loved the environment over there and also loved the fact that the coaching staff planned on treating him like Brendan Rice, a 6'3" true freshman that needed to climb the depth chart and not Jerry Rice's kid. Suffice to say, although Brendan is happy to be the son of Jerry Rice, he doesn't want any preferential treatment. One of the first things the Colorado coaching staff noticed is just how similar Brendan is to dear old dad when it comes to his work ethic. Brendan's head coach, Carl Dornell, calls Rice a good player who's got a chance to be great and do it on his own merit. One of the first on the practice field and one of the last to leave is how the coaches describe him. That's also how Jerry's college and professional coaches described him. Jerry was said to ask players, coaches, and trainers a ton of questions to learn everything he needed to learn to be great. The word on Brendan is that he also asks a lot of questions and is regarded as a phenomenal student of the game. Whether it's learning different tricks of the trade on his routes or improving his knowledge of the game in general, Rice always has his eyes open and ready to learn. Asking questions is one thing, but how is his game translating? Based on Brendan's first year with the program, the fast learner is putting his talents on full display and people are learning the name Brendan Rice and beginning to ask questions about how good he might be. Although Brendan doesn't want to get on by his father's name, he does want to be the next legendary Rice, and after scoring receiving touchdowns during his true freshman year in limited duty, Rice appears to have moved up the depth chart thanks to the departure of KD Nixon's transfer to USC. Many have Rice pegged to be a starter in 2021 and work his way up as high as number 2 on the depth chart, with some observers saying Rice could even find himself in contention for number 1 receiver and that his potential is that high. Year 2 for Brendan Rice could be a promising one, and the wide receiver, who is also known as an electrifying kick returner, could find himself in a fantastic position to stake his claim as one of the team's premier options on offense and weapons on special teams. During his freshman year, he had already made it into the Colorado record books, becoming the first Buffaloes player with a receiving touchdown and a punt return touchdown in the same game. We told you that he's electric, and one area that Brendan certainly has his dad in is the speed department. His 10.79 second dash at his state's track championship in high school put him on the map, and it's worth noting that the hardworking younger Rice shaved almost a second off his time in that year alone. While Jerry Jr.'s football career may be over, his younger brother Brendan certainly has the potential to make it to the NFL one day and carve his own path. While he's still developing as a player, he certainly has the hunger to be great, and it doesn't hurt that he has the DNA of the GOAT himself. It will be interesting to see what the future holds for the sophomore for Colorado, but we will definitely be rooting for him, as will all the fans who want to see the son of a legend succeed. And hopefully one day don an NFL jersey with the name Rice on his back like his GOAT father. Hey, we could dream, can't we? Alright, sports fans, that does it for our time on the sons of Jerry Rice and their potential to be great just like dear old dad. Well, let us know what you think about Brendan's chances by dropping a comment below, and as always, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, do us a favor and click that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on our content and more videos like this. Until next time, sports fans.